has to be objective, not subjective, of course. Nobody better to shed a comprehensive look over the role of state-run media, over the latest happenings, economic, political, and social, better than Dr. Mohammed Al-Khouli, a UN official and, of course, an international media expert. Good morning, Dr. Khouli.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Khouli, and of course the importance of state-run media everywhere, and especially in the Middle East. How do you see the role played by state-run media in the Middle East and in Egypt?
Okay, let us change the expression state-run, because when you try to talk about a kind of conjunction between the word state and the media, people have their own suspicion. You see, they think about the propaganda thing, and then sometimes they recall the dictatorship regimes in which the state dictates whatever the media says or express. I think
we can maybe say state-owned media.
That's right. Yes, right. Well, state here is the sponsor of media versus the individuals, or let's say the capitalist circles which own the media in other places. The criterion here is how much the media people who work there have a kind of freedom of expression and have latitude of trying to express their opinions and their visions, you see. And this also depend on the degree of training, experience of the people who work in this media. And if we apply this on, let's say, Maspero, for example, I think Maspero has a long history and experience of performing the mission of being the media people to the Egyptian people and even to the Arab people.
Definitely.
And this is proven through when Maspero chose some of its classic and some of its past experience and they tried to reflect it on the screen. I think a lot of people were so attracted and were so appreciative of what they have seen. And some people say, we were seeing this, or the older generations were watching this and were so lucky because it was so professional and so informative. Why don't we try to invest this experience in our new performance of these the nowadays? I mean, in the same time, when the state, not the government, I mean, when the state sponsors the media, this means it's a kind of guarantee vis-a-vis money, salaries, rewards, everything, promotion and everything. This secures the minimum required justice in administering the media organization. In the private sector, there is a lot of discrepancies and a lot of injustices and a lot of inequalities, because it is liable or a victim sometimes of private tendencies and private enterprises, and even to the advertisement, the commercials, because unless in the private sector, unless you profit through the commercial, you are a failure. I think this element is not so, let's say, predominant in the state-run organization. The state-run organization has a mission, and the mission is number one, not only the profit. Yes, it should realize some profits. It should not be a failed enterprise, but in the same time, it should try to have a balance between their mission towards the people, and their mission is, or has three, let's say, three functions. The first function to the people is information. You have to provide your audience in the state-run organization, you see, with a lot of information. Second thing, education. You have to educate people, not education like a school. It's a big school which gives people a lot of experiences, a lot of awareness, and in the same time entertainment. These are the three main or principal missions for any state-run organization.
Right, Dr. Khoury, as a long-time expert in that particular field, if you would like to elaborate to the viewers the difference between TV journalism and journalism and talk shows. I mean, there is a specific purpose and mission for each of those three sectors. If you'd like to elaborate more on those three sectors.
First of all, as you said, each branch has its own specific mission, but they should complement each other. I mean, the talk show should be an entertainment show, first of all, in order to attract people, you see, to watch it, you see. And in the same time, it has to have a kind of a personal touch. It's related to the person.
Presenter.
The presenter, the broadcaster, let's say, a lady or a young man or a man, anyway. You see, it should have its own character, a special character. In the same time, it has to give people a lot of information and a lot of education at the same time. As far as the other branches of presentation, let's say news, even the newsreel, you see, should be entertaining at the same time, you see. And at the same time, you should try to connect people to what's going on outside. You don't have to concentrate all the time on the localities.
On domestic issues.
On the domestic issues. Because if you go outside in a very objective way, in an aware way of what's going on, in a very sensitive way in trying to handle the news and the information, this widens the scope of awareness in the audience, especially the young generations.
Right, and Mr. Khoury, would you please explain how does the media affect public opinion? How does it form public opinion, not only in Egypt, but also around the world?
Well, it's a very long-standing question until now. I think it started maybe in the 20s of the 20th century, you see, and there is a very important classical reference by journalist in America. It's called Public Opinion, you see, and it was concentrated on the role of newspapers, you see, at that time, printed newspapers. But after that came the radio, and then we have now the television. Public opinion, it's formed through a kind of you reach a consensus among the general masses about a certain case, a certain question, and you try to service this question or this case, you as a broadcaster, you see, through information, but this information should rely on, let's say, verifiable sources. So you don't have to rely on vague sources, on disputed sources, but it should be verifiable. I mean that people can understand where did you try to get these things. Are your sources valid? Are they legitimate? You see, so what's now broadcasted through kind of secret records, when you have secret records and you try to broadcast them, I think this is a very disputable thing. These people should know what is going on, you see, and you as a presenter or as a mediator, you have to be the mediator between the source and the receiver, the audience. If you do this in an objective way, in a very verifiable way, I think you can reach what you want to do.
It's so strange that most of the oldest institutions, international media outlets nowadays, because of the conflict in policies, in economies and other issues, are becoming directed. which is not supposed to happen. I mean, media outlets are supposed to be objective, inside out. How does that affect the whole environment and delivering the messages? And I mean, how do you see that? How do you read it? Media outlets being directed in a certain way.
Okay, I don't to see him as a.
It's the truth. Let's be frank.
Yes, I don't. I don't to talk about rhetorics, but the broadcaster, a lady or a man, should have a position, should have a sense of mission, that I am the servant of these people. I am the mediator who try to assimilate the information, and then I try to reflect this information in an attractive way to our audience. You see, this sense of mission, I think, should be the motto or the slogan of any broadcaster in the world. And that's why I say here in the private sector, the sense of mission is very difficult to perform or to convey, because you have other, I mean, the owners of the media have their own targets, you see, profit or something
besides
like that.
Besides, there is also the editorial policies that are forced over whoever is working inside a TV station.
The editorial, if you impose editorial, in the editorial process, if you impose some principles which are outside, alien to the substance of the news, you see, of the material, I think this is failure, you see. The editorial approach should be part of the of servicing the substance itself. If the substance is, let's say, try to let's say, reinforce the awareness of people about a certain question, about a certain issue, it's okay. But if what you say or what you try to present, to talk about, is something alien to the substance of the question itself. If the question, let's say, is population problem, a demography in the country, that we are we have a lot of people, you see, and we have to reduce the size of people, of the population. If you try to service this question, it's okay. But if you try to talk about religion and tradition and these things, you see, so you diffuse people's awareness. You see, you don't let people concentrate on this kind of particular issue. So I think the way of treating the question should be derived from the substance of the question itself, of the issue itself, and you should be aware of your target. What is the target which I want to reach before you start your mission?
Right. Mr. Khouri, you've just mentioned that the broadcaster or the presenter should have his own character in the way he is delivering the message. So how can this take place? Because sometimes there's some confusion that through delivering the message and having your own character, sometimes the presenter could be biased to his own views and ideas.
This is a very difficult question, and I think it is that difficult question all over the world, and all over the history of media until now.
Right.
You see, you have to, he has or she has to play a kind of a balance, a very, very sensitive balance, you see, between his own ideas, his character. I think he is not a machine, you see. He has to infuse, he has to reflect his own personality, you see, on what he is doing.
Putting aside his own views.
Not putting aside, trying to reach the golden balance between his own character, I don't say his views, his character, and what he trying to present. But let's say something. If you are not convinced, first of all, of what you are presenting, I think you don't have to go on air. That's the golden thing. The presenter shouldn't be just a machine, and in the same time, He shouldn't be a political leader, a political chief. You see, the balance between the two extremes, this is the good, the successful mission of any successful presenter.
Right.
When can we say that a media is becoming something that is not requested, or becoming a destructive weapon, or something that could be come to the not to the benefit, not of the policies, but to the benefit of the welfare of the people, the welfare of the state, or the welfare of the interests of the generations, not becoming spreading or delivering the right message, awareness enough?
Yani, we have a lot of examples and percepts in the history of media, at least during the 20th century, you see. I mean, we don't have to reinvent the wheel or reinvent the electricity again, you see. We have two extremes. The first extreme is the Nazi propaganda, the Goebbels and Hitler propaganda. This is an extreme. This extreme was successful at that time in trying to inflammate the people's awareness.
Instigate
yes,
certain
and
ideas.
instigation, yes. But it failed because it has its own failure, factors of failure in it.
And because it was baseless.
Yes. The other extreme, not extreme, the other maybe much more rational way was the BBC performance. Sometimes, let's say, especially in the 60s and 70s, and sometimes until now. These two things, or two schools of information, should be, any presenter should be aware of the two extremes or the two schools of thought and of performance. You should avoid the first one, and then the other one, the BBC thing, you should try to pick up the best of it. It's not so good in everything, but sometimes it's good because it tries to be somewhat objective, you see, and cool in the presentation. There is another, a third example, which I mean, in my opinion, even I was always, until now, I'm following it. It is the NPR in America. The NPR is the National Public Radio. The National Public Radio in the United States, it is financed by the state, but not interfered in by the state, you see, by the government, I mean. I think it's financed by the Foreign Affairs Secretary or Foreign Affairs Department, Foreign Affairs Department sometimes, and then also by the people themselves, the listeners, the audience, through their own donations, you see. And so there is a kind of they are securing their resources, their money resources, and therefore they are able to try to reach a kind of objective presentation of the material. And sometimes when you read their analysis, or you listen, I'm reading them now because I receive it on my iPad. You feel that there is a kind of a touch of an objective situation. Objective people who are trying to analyze and to try to comment on the circumstances and on the developments. So this gives a kind of persuasion, of satisfaction and persuasion to the audience, and this is success in the same time. And therefore we have to, when we try to amend our practice here in Cairo, in Egypt, I think we have to follow these examples and to try to take the best of their performance and to try to emulate it, but according to our circumstances, to the mentality of our people, and to the national objectives of the country.
Right. Sir, what's the best model for state-owned media around the world, and do you think it's suitable for Egypt to copy from?
In my opinion, in my humble opinion, I think it's a kind of a combination between the BBC and the NPR. BBC in England and the NPR in the United States.
So it's a combination of both?
Yes, it's not a combination. You have to be open to these experiences, not to imitate it literally, letter by letter, but to try to get the learned lessons from their success.
That's what I meant.
And to try to.
That's what I meant
Yes.
when I said copying. But what's the difference between these two state-owned media?
As I said, the word state-owned, it's so unhappy, the expression state-owned. It is state-sponsored.
Right.
You see? Yeah, because state-owned means that the state dictates what is going on. This is not the case, in my opinion. Or at least they are so professional that they don't let the audience feel that they are state-owned. You see? It's a
Right.
very clever thing, a clever trick. But in the same time, it works. People feel that, well, this is the NPR talking. They don't say, this is the American government talking. This is not Mrs. May,
Theresa May?
talking, but this is the BBC talking.
Right.
Although in the final analysis, both of them are in the service of the national
Representing the
objectives,
government,
the
right.
national objectives of
the country.
the country.
It's true that there are the good old schools of media that is negotiable. We have to follow. But now with the emerge of the social media and the Twitter and all those means of communication that is developing so fast, we can't oldest generations, we can't be able to follow, keep up. How do you expect the following generation to be starting off their own type of media?
Yeah. Now it's a challenge for all media, but there is a kind of a theory which is delivered by, I think, Professor Clapper. He is one of the American scientists and thinkers in the field of media, that the means of communication, or the media itself, the different means of communication, they are reinforcing each other's. If a media succeeds, her success or their success reinforces the success of the other one. And he tried to explain what he is trying to think about. He said that the advent of the radio did not abolish the newspaper, but it reinforced the newspapers, you see, and the newspapers tried to explore new arenas and new grounds for success. The same thing, the advent of the TV, the television, did not let the radio extinguish. It reinforced it, but still, the old media should try to readapt with the new situation, and they try to change all the time according to the new thing. But now, as you say, the printed material, the newspapers, the paper, the printed newspapers are in danger now. They are now like, some people feel that they are obsolete, you see, after the social media thing. This is a new challenge, you see, but no one can try to boast about that, I know this will happen. No, but still, as I say, every new thing can reinforce the older, but the older should try to adapt to the new situation. They try to find new means to succeed and to survive. But I'm with you that the social media now is a challenge. But the social media had its own failures and its own dangers. And I think if these failures and dangers expand, you see, I think people, especially the average person, will resort again to the traditional means of communication, television and radio. And I'll tell you, now the radio in some countries like America is trying to come again, the radio, you see, to come again, and people are still listening to the radio, respecting it, and feeling that it's a kind of an objective means of communication.
Right. Dr. Mohammed Al-Khouli, UN official and international media expert, would like to thank you very much coming over to the Breakfast Show.
Thank you so much.
May you have a good day.
And you too.
Thank you, Mr. Khouli, and have a good day, sir. And dear viewers, now we go to this short break and we'll be right back.